Friday morning at the Vegas Stats and Information Network. I'm Gil Alexander, host of It's a Numbers Game, a show that seeks to go deep inside the numbers on a daily basis throughout the sporting world, baseball in particular, but certainly throughout the calendar year. But one of the things that I think is incumbent upon us is while we throw out numbers each and every day, we actually want to get kind of basic today and do a little betting 101. And no better person to help us navigate through that and really tell us how a line is actually made, why it's made, and the history of line making than someone who's been in the business for many years in a distinguished career, our very own VP here at Gone Gaming, and of course, also here at VSiN, Vinny Magliulo. Great to have you, man.
Good to be here with you, Gil. Oh, you did a great job saying it. It helps to move the hands when you say Magliulo.
Magliulo.
See?
So Vinny, listen, I think this is lost on lots of people. We tend to throw out these numbers each and every day. This is the number, here's how it's moving. But no one really has a sense of its history and what you're actually trying to do, especially when there's a difference. They also use these two terms interchangeably. Oddsmaker, bookmaker.
Sure.
Two different disciplines. Let's start with back in the day. One man made the line, did he not?
Bob Martin made the line back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Gil. Bob from back east, terrific odds maker and bookmaker, and came to Las Vegas and actually was the point of reference and the establisher, if you will, of the betting line. And what was really great about Bob, and I had the privilege of meeting him and speaking with him. Jimmy Vaccaro did the same, and Bob was not only a great odds maker and bookmaker, he was a good teacher. He gave us, we were willing to listen, he would bestow upon us some very good fundamentals, and was terrific. And we moved forward a little bit to where now odds making and bookmaking, sports wagering became a lot more popular here in Nevada. Regulations were changed, tax structures were changed, taxes were lowered on sports wagers.
Right.
And so now people started putting books. Jackie Gone put in a book down at the El Cortez. So downtown started to have some sports books. On Las Vegas Boulevard, they were independent operators, literally Damon Runyon type places where you went in and just found many characters over the years that we'll delve into on another show. But the fact of the matter is they were independent. Then in 1976, a gentleman by the name of Frank Rosenthal realized that this had potential. Sports wagering was going to be an attraction and also be a complement to the rest of the casino operation. And he decided to put a sports book into a hotel casino, and at that time it was the Stardust, 1976. Shortly thereafter, Michael Gaughan opened the Barbary Coast in 1978, and at that time, that was the only one of only two hotel casinos with a sports book inside of the property. And we did a tremendous amount of business. And when the Dunes across the street and the Flamingo next door and the MGM and Caesar's Palace customers started to all come and see us at the Barbary Coast, they realized too they needed to get in on this.
Everyone copied.
And then everyone, that's why now every major resort, or just about every hotel casino has a sports book on property.
It's amazing to think about for those of us who weren't around back then, to think of all these independent sportsbook shops named after horse racing establishments like Churchill Downs.
Churchill Downs, Little Caesars, a gentleman by the name of Gene Mayday from Detroit had Little Caesars across from Caesar's Palace. Bill Dark and had an operation in North Las Vegas. These were all independents, and they coexisted for a while, and then it just became a situation where, as expansion took place on Las Vegas Boulevard, those strip malls that they were located in were absorbed by the mega resorts, and they went away.
And so, while Frank Martin was a one-man show, this is every line came from this one man's head. Roxy at Las Vegas Sports Consultants.
Roxy Roxborough, yes.
And Roxy Roxborough is going to be on the show on Monday to actually discuss what you alluded to, Vinny, which is that back in the day, there were 10% taxes, then a 2% tax.
Yep.
And all this talk about the legalization of sports betting today, doesn't really have that conversation yet. They're going to have to work that out. They're going to have to figure out how to make it work for the sports bettor, otherwise they'll go offshore as well. But it evolved to the point where now you hear mainstream media talking about a number, a Vegas number. That's not actually true, though, of how numbers get made today. Daily sports, like we're in at this time of year, baseball, basketball, hockey, that starts offshore, doesn't it?
It does. In the Caribbean, there are operators, and they do a terrific job. I mean, it's a situation where they are open much earlier. There's overnight lines and things like that, to where they establish a foundation, if you will, to begin the number. But it's also incumbent upon us here to make numbers as well. And one of the things that Roxborough taught us all, and Roxy taught a class that I inherited at some point.
That's right.
So we can chat about that later on. But Roxy kind of centralized it. He created at Las Vegas Sports Consultants a starting point for the operators here in Las Vegas. At that time, that was in the 70s and up to the mid 80s. Then Roxy put it out. The Stardust, again, was the first, put the first Las Vegas line, opened the line, and then everyone else kind of followed suit. As we became more involved and more sophisticated, we realized we needed to, at least in my professional opinion, was we needed to establish our own line too, to make sure that we understood why the number was why it was.
Yeah.
And the same thing today. Numbers do begin in the Caribbean. They do a terrific job. But for instance, today we're already making numbers on tomorrow's games, and we're always in look-ahead mode. And as an operator, you have the fiscal responsibility to make sure that the number that you're hanging, because you're responsible for it at the end of the day. So there is the line that is established, you post it. It's important to know what the function of the line is too, Gil. It's very simple. The function of the betting line, of the point spread, is to balance action. In our business, we don't necessarily want to care who wins a particular game or a particular event. We want to get equal amounts of action on both or multiple sides if it is, say, a future book or a multifaceted proposition.
And yeah, and I did not mean to give the impression that Vegas doesn't start anything. We're talking about daily sports at this time of year is particularly started offshore. But during football season in particular, Vegas is not shy about starting the line or the line originating here. Johnny Avello at the Wynn is famous for putting out college football first on Sunday.
Yes.
Chris and Pinnacle will quickly follow that.
Correct.
And then Johnny will react to that. Here at the South Point, you, Chris, Andrews, Jimmy Vaccaro, legends, all three of you, you guys have now done this thing on an annual basis where you're not shy about throwing out a college football line to start the season.
Absolutely not, Gil. And the thing about it, that becomes a marketing tool, if you will, as well. So, which the sportsbook is now a critical marketing tool in this ever-increasing competitive gaming world. 48 out of our 50 states in the United States alone have some form of gaming. So, but the other part of it is what I enjoy a lot is sitting down with Chris and with Jimmy, and we formulate numbers. I don't want to just say, hey, this is my number and that's the number, because that's not the best way to do it, frankly. There are perspectives that we all share. How does the number start? Really with a numerical value. It's a power rating. Every team, and in some cases players, have a numerical value. That's your starting point. And then you add in certain variables. Who's the home team? Are there any key injuries? Let's measure in case of football, what we refer to as the skill positions, the quarterback, key running back, wide receiver. Every now and then a key defensive player will come into play. Right. Lawrence Taylor and Ronnie Lott were the first defensive players that you went, wow, this is really important if they're in the lineup or not. So you put that together and then you say, all right, this is what we believe to be the starting point for our particular event. Let's put it up, let's post it, and then folks have at it.
How heated does that discussion ever get? You guys are obviously friends, but is there, if do you ever get in situations where there is definitely a disagreement? How does that get resolved?
No, I know it's not. It's actually pretty respectful. You just articulate your position, and we're pretty close. It's not like one of us will have a team, 2, and another, somebody else will have a team 5 or
right.
7.
Yeah.
But no, it's actually it's pretty casual conversation. It's gotten to the point where
Must
it's
be fascinating.
right, and it's actually it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
I find it really relaxing to do that. To be honest with you.
And the other thing that's very interesting for me as a guy who has been a handicapper, handicappers tend to not particularly like each other. They tend to be a little jealous of each other and competitive. You guys are part of a fraternity, and a really
Absolutely.
small fraternity that has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
Once you guys make your line, do you ever consult with fellow bookmakers around town?
No question. You have to network. It's like any other business, Gil. I think what I learned, and again, go all the way back to the start of our conversation with Bob Martin. You want to get opinions, but not only opinions of your colleagues. I want to get your opinion as a handicap. Because you need to respect certain bettors as well as colleagues.
Right.
Because bettors, especially professional bettors, have a very good opinion, and that's useful information. And to me, there's where a mutual respect develops, and that's going to help you as an odds maker be a better odds maker and a better bookmaker if you can have that two-way. And it's a very honorable relationship in most cases. The most successful relationships are those that share that respect and you play and you really work off each other.
And that is such a key thing that you're talking about. So you've really described the odds making part. And people tend to conflate those two words, odds maker and bookmaker. They're two entirely different disciplines. Some people are good at one and not at the other. Some people are really adept at both. What do you enjoy most of those two? And describe the bookmaking. So once you've got your number, then what happens?
Well, that's a great point, Gil, because odds making is one function to the betting scenario. The other is the bookmaking part is where you actually are now trying to balance your books, so to speak. That's where line movement comes into place. Oftentimes, folks will look up and say, "Well, you don't care who wins. You just care. You put it up and it's balanced action." Well, it's not always the case. That's where line movement comes in, typically, unless there's an injury or some other factors. But the reality is, line making is what we described and how we put together the point spread, the price of an event. Bookmaking is where you're actually taking the wagers, and there's art to that as well. It's not only what the amount of the wager is, but who's making that wager. Again, I go back to the experienced bettor and somebody whose opinion that we have come to learn is very astute. And so there are often times where, let's say your limit on an event is $5,000. Somebody may come up and bet $5,000. You may not move the number, but somebody who's a bit more experienced, and this is not to knock the $5,000 player. But if someone comes up, like if Gil Alexander comes up and wants to bet a regular season total and only wants to bet it for 500, Gil Alexander has got a pretty good opinion.
I hope so. That's the object anyway. You got to know your clientele.
Absolutely.
No better source for all that information, Betting 101 and beyond Betting 101. Love to have you come back on, Vinny, and describe that tax situation we talked about in the past, the history. We can do this many times. Vinny Maliulo, thank you, sir.
Look forward to it, Gil.
Gil Alexander, more coming up on VSiN, Vegas Stats and Information Network.